The lights on the bridge of Unity 7 space station flickered as an emergency signal broke through all other communications. Commander Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started beeping. He put down his cup and walked quickly to the main control panel where Lieutenant Amy Parker was already working. "What do we have, Parker?" Jake asked, as he looked at the bright screen showing incoming messages. Amy's fingers moved fast across the controls. Her face looked worried. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from outside our solar system. It's coming from the Kethfer region. The signal is very strong, like they're using a lot of power to send it." Jake knew about the Kethfer. Everyone in space did. They were one of the oldest and smartest alien races in the galaxy. Their ships could do things that human scientists still didn't understand. They had technology that was thousands of years ahead of Earth's best equipment. The idea that they would contact humans was strange. The Kethver usually ignored younger races like humans. "Put it on the main screen," Jake ordered. The large screen in front of them came to life. First there was just static and strange colors. Then the image became clear. Jake had seen pictures of Kethver before, but never a live one. The being on the screen had green and brown scales covering its face and neck, had 4 arms instead of 2 like humans. Yellow, and they looked very scared. Chief Engineer Ron Davis walked onto the bridge just as the alien started to speak. The translation computer turned the alien's words into English. But everyone could hear the fear in its voice, even through the machine translation. "People of Earth, humans who live among the stars," the Kethver said. Its 4 hands moved in, what looked like begging gestures. "My name is Council Leader Vexter of the Kethver Empire. I speak to you now in our darkest hour. Our proud civilization faces complete destruction. If something could scare the Kethver this much, it had to be very bad." The Kethver had weapons that could destroy entire moons. Their shields could stop almost any attack. Their ships moved faster than anything humans had ever built. The alien continued speaking. "A great evil approaches our home worlds. We call them the Machine Swarm. They are not alive, but they think and they grow. They eat planets and stars to make more of themselves. They have already destroyed the Zilani Empire. They have consumed the core worlds of the Antari Federation. Now they come for us." Amy looked at Jake with wide eyes. The Zilani and Antari were both much stronger than humans. If the Machine Swarm had destroyed them, what could Earth possibly do? "We have fought them with all our power," Vextar said. His voice was getting more desperate. "Our quantum cannons cannot stop them. Our phase missiles pass right through them. Our best scientists cannot find a way to hurt them. Every weapon we fire seems to make them stronger." Ron whispered to Jake, "Sir, if the Kethver can't stop these things, how can we?" Jake held up his hand for quiet. He wanted to hear everything the alien had to say. "We know that humans are a young race," Vextar continued. "We know your technology is not as advanced as ours. We know your ships are slower and your weapons are weaker, but we have heard stories about your people. Stories about how you fight when there is no hope. Stories about how you win battles you should lose." The alien paused and looked directly at the camera. Jake felt like those yellow eyes were looking right at him. "We are proud beings. It hurts us to ask for help from a younger race. But our pride means nothing if our children die and our worlds burn. Please, humans of Earth, if you have any ships that can fight, if you have any weapons that can hurt these machines, we beg you to help us. We will pay any price. We will share any technology. We will give you anything you want." The transmission started to break up. Strange sounds came through the speakers. In the background, Jake could see flashing lights that looked like explosions. "They have found our hidden base," Vextar said quickly. "I must go. Our main fleet will make a final stand at our homeworld of Keth Prime. If you can help us, please. Come quickly if you cannot. Please remember that we tried to stop them. Do not let them reach Earth." The screen went black. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Jake looked at his crew. Ami was staring at her control panel. Ron was shaking, his head slowly. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "what do we do?" Jake walked to the big window that looked out into space. He could see Earth in the distance, blue and green and beautiful. He thought about his wife and kids down there. He thought about all the people on Earth who didn't know that death was coming toward them from across the galaxy. Parker, get me. Admiral Lisa Grant on Earth. Emergency channel. Yes, sir. While Amy worked on the communication, Ron came over to Jake. Commander, you're not really thinking about this, are you? Our best ships are still being built. Most of our fleet is old Earth Defense Force ships that we use for training. Half of them need repairs just to fly from Earth to Mars. Jake knew Ron was right. The human fleet was not impressive. When Earth first met alien races 10 years ago, the aliens had been surprised that humans could even travel between planets. Human technology was considered primitive by galactic standards. Earth's military was designed to fight other humans, not alien machines that could eat stars. But Jake also knew something about humans that maybe the aliens didn't understand. Humans were stubborn. When someone asked them for help, they helped, even when it was stupid. When someone threatened their friends, they fought. Even when they couldn't win, the communication screen lit up with Admiral Grant's face. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had been fighting in space since before first contact with aliens. Morrison, what's the emergency? She asked. Admiral, we just received a distress call from the Kethver Empire. They're facing something called the Machine Swarm. They're asking for military assistance. Admiral Grant's eyebrows went up. The Kethver are asking us for help. Are you sure this isn't some kind of joke? No joke, Admiral. I'm sending you the recording now. Jake watched Grant's face as she listened to the alien's message. He saw her expression change from surprise to worry to determination. How long do we have? She asked. Based on the transmission time and what we know about Kethver's space, maybe 2 weeks before their final battle. Grant was quiet for a moment, and she said, Morrison, you know what our fleet looks like right now. We've got some good ships, but most of them are protecting our colonies or patrolling trade routes. What we could put together quickly would be mostly reserve ships and training vessels. I know, Admiral. Kethver have technology we can't even understand. If they can't stop this threat, what makes you think we can? Jake looked out at Earth again. Maybe we can't stop it, Admiral. But if we don't try, and these machines win, they'll come for Earth next. At least if we help the Kethver, we might learn something about how to fight them. Admiral Grant nodded slowly. You're right. Besides, when someone asks for help, we help. That's what humans do. We'll start gathering every ship that can fly and fight. Morrison, prepare Unity 7 for possible evacuation. If this goes bad, Earth needs to know what's coming. The communication ended. Jake turned to his crew. Heard the Admiral? We're going to war. Admiral Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and looked out at the strangest fleet she had ever commanded. The old battlecruiser was 20 years old and had been scheduled for retirement next year. Now, it was the flagship of what? Earth High Command was calling Operation Last Stand. The name was not encouraging. Grant watched as more ships arrived at the meeting point near Jupiter. Each one looked worse than the last. The USS Resilient had once been a mining ship that dug asteroids for metal. Captain Steve Hughes had spent 3 years turning it into something that could fight. It had thick armor plating welded onto the outside. But you could still see where the mining equipment used to be attached. The USS Scrapyard was even worse. Commander Linda Thompson had literally built it from pieces of destroyed ships. The front half came from an old cargo hauler. The back half was from a patrol boat that had been damaged in a pirate attack. The middle section was completely new, made from spare parts that different shipyards didn't want anymore. Admiral, said Lieutenant Commander Paul Garcia, looking up from his control panel. The USS Academy just arrived. Grant shook her head as she watched the training ship move into formation. The Academy was where new Space Force officers learned how to fly in combat. It had never been in a real battle. Its weapons were low-powered training versions that were designed not to actually hurt anything. Now they were loading it with real missiles and hoping it wouldn't fall apart. What's our total count, Garcia? Grant asked. 47 ships, Admiral. 15 actual warships, 12 converted civilian vessels, 8 training ships, and 12 support craft. Most of them are running on backup systems or emergency repairs. The communication system crackled as Captain Danny Chen's voice came through from the USS Patchwork. "Admiral Grant, my engineering team just finished checking our main reactor. They give us a 60% chance of surviving a hyperspace jump. They said to tell you that's being optimistic." Grant almost laughed, despite how serious the situation was. The USS Patchwork was famous throughout the fleet for being held together with spare parts and prayer. Captain Chen was one of the best engineers in the Space Force, but even he couldn't make miracles happen every day. "That's better odds than we had during the Terran Rebellion," Grant replied. "At least this time, we have actual warships, instead of just mining equipment and cargo haulers." She remembered that war. Earth's colonies had tried to break away from the home planet. The Space Force had been caught completely unprepared. They had won by using whatever ships they could find and fighting smarter than their enemies expected. Maybe they could do it again. Captain Bobby Martinez called in from the USS Underdog. "Admiral, I hate to complain, but my ship wasn't designed for combat. We're a research vessel. Our biggest weapon is a mineral scanner that we jury-rigged to work like a laser cannon. Can it hurt enemy ships?" Grant asked. "Well, it might make them uncomfortable. Then it's better than nothing." The truth was that this fleet represented everything Earth could spare, without leaving their homeworld defenseless. The newer, better ships were protecting human colonies that were scattered across dozens of systems. The really advanced ships were still being built in the shipyards around Mars and wouldn't be ready for months. What they were sending to help the Kethver was literally the bottom of the barrel. Ships that were too old, too experimental, or too broken to be used for anything important. The kind of ships that most space forces would have turned into scrap metal years ago, Commander. Kate Sullivan checked in from the USS Survivor. Her ship had earned its name by living through 3 different battles that should have destroyed it. It was covered in patches and repairs, but it kept flying somehow. "Admiral, I've been thinking about what we're up against," Sullivan said. "These machine swarm things destroyed the Zilani Empire. The Zilani had particle beam weapons that could cut through planets. If those weapons couldn't stop the machines, what chance do our old laser cannons have?" It was a good question. Grant had been wondering the same thing. Lieutenant Commander Nick Adams spoke up from the USS Laboratory. His ship was supposed to be a mobile research station, but they had loaded it with every experimental weapon that Earth scientists had been working on. None of the weapons had been properly tested. "I've been studying the data from the Kethver," Transmission Adams said. "The machines seem to be designed to fight against advanced technology. They adapt to energy weapons and absorb power from the attacks. The more sophisticated the weapon, the better they get at defending against it." Thought about this. "Are you saying that advanced weapons make them stronger?" "That's exactly what I'm saying, Admiral. The Kethver use quantum energy cannons that can destroy moons. But every time they fire those weapons at the machines learn how to absorb that type of energy and use it to make more of themselves." Captain Joe Franklin called in from the USS Scrapper. "So you're telling me that our crappy old weapons might actually be better than their fancy new ones?" "It's possible," Adams replied. "Our weapons are so primitive that the machines might not have any defense protocols for them. When was the last time anyone in the galaxy used simple kinetic weapons or chemical explosives?" Grant realized what Adams was getting at. Earth's military still used a lot of old-fashioned weapons, because they couldn't afford to replace everything with advanced alien technology. Their ships fired solid metal bullets instead of energy beams. They used chemical explosives instead of quantum bombs. They had electromagnetic shields instead of gravitic barriers. By galactic standards, human military technology was laughably primitive. But maybe that was exactly what they needed. "All ships, listen up," Grant announced over the fleet communication channel. "I want every ship to check their most basic weapons. Railguns, missile launchers, chemical explosives, anything that doesn't use advanced energy technology. If you have mining lasers, cutting tools, or industrial equipment that can be used as weapons, make sure they're ready." Captain Mary Johnson responded from the USS Makeshift. "Admiral, are you seriously telling us to fight space machines with mining equipment?" "I'm telling you to fight them with whatever works. The Kethvar tried to fight these things with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, and they lost. Maybe it's time to try the oldest weapons in the galaxy. Commander Rick Peterson laughed over the radio from the USS Frankenstein. The ship was famous for being built from parts of 6 different vessels that had nothing in common with each other. My ship is so messed up that half the time I don't know how it works myself. Maybe the machines won't be able to figure it out either. Grant smiled. Peterson had a point. The human fleet was so disorganized and jury-rigged that even human engineers had trouble understanding how some of the ships functioned. If the machines were designed to analyze and counter advanced technology, they might be completely confused by humanity's chaotic approach to engineering. Admiral, Garcia said quietly, are we really going to war with a fleet of broken-down ships and obsolete weapons? Grant looked out at her fleet again. The ships looked like a collection of spare parts held together with determination and stubbornness. Half of them probably wouldn't survive the trip to Kethver space. The other half might fall apart during the first battle, but they were what Earth had to offer. And sometimes, the tools you have are the tools you need. Garcia sent a message to all ships. Tell them to prepare for hyperspace jump in 6 hours. We have a civilization to save.
Yes, Admiral.
As the fleet began its final preparations, Grant couldn't help but wonder if they were about to make the biggest mistake in human history. They were taking Earth's most pathetic military force to fight an enemy that had destroyed galactic empires. But they were also about to prove something that humans had always believed. When someone asked for help, you helped them even if it seemed impossible. When someone threatened innocent people, you fought back, even if you couldn't win. The fleet might be feeble, but the people flying those ships were not. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kethver system, and Admiral Grant immediately knew they were in trouble. The view screen on the USS Defiance showed something that looked like a nightmare made of metal and light. The machine swarm stretched across space like a giant spider web made of silver and black metal. Millions of small machines moved in perfect formation, creating geometric patterns that hurt to look at. They were taking apart the outer planets of the system piece by piece, using the materials to build more of themselves. Sweet Mother of God, whispered Captain Bobby Martinez from the USS Underdog. His voice came through the communication system. Sounding scared and amazed at the same time, Grant had seen many battles in her career, but nothing like this. The machines moved like they were alive, but there was something cold and wrong about the way they operated. They worked together perfectly, like parts of a giant brain that stretched across the entire solar system. Admiral, said Lieutenant Commander Garcia from his position at the sensor station. I'm counting approximately 12 million individual machine units. They range in size from small fighters to constructs larger than our biggest battleships. Grant felt her stomach sink. 12 million enemies. The human fleet had 47 ships. What about the Kethver fleet? She asked. Garcia worked at his controls for a moment. I'm detecting about 300 Kethver ships near their home planet. They appear to be in full retreat. On the main screen, Grant could see the Kethver ships. They were beautiful vessels that looked like they were made of crystal and light. Their sleek hulls reflected the colors of nearby stars, and they moved through space like graceful dancers. But right now, they were running for their lives. As Grant watched, a group of Kethver destroyers tried to make a stand against a cluster of machine drones. The alien ships fired beams of pure energy that could slice through asteroids like butter. The weapons hit the machines directly, and for a moment Grant thought they might actually hurt them. But then something horrible happened. The machines absorbed the energy from the Kethver weapons and used it to make themselves bigger and stronger. Where there had been 50 machine drones, now there were 100. The Kethver weapons had literally fed the enemy. The machine swarm surrounded the Kethver destroyers like sharks attacking wounded fish. Grant watched in horror as the alien ships were torn apart from the inside, and the machines burrowed through their hulls and destroyed them piece by piece. Admiral Grant, came a transmission from one of the Kethver ships. The alien face on the screen looked shocked and desperate. You actually came. Your people actually answered our call for help. Grant recognized the alien from the original message. Council Leader Vexstar looked even more scared than before, if that was possible. We said we would help, Grant replied simply. Vextar's yellow eyes looked past Grant to the view of the human fleet behind her. His expression changed from hope to confusion to something that might have been disappointment. "Your ships," he said. "Carefully, they appear to be ... old, outdated, and barely functional," Grant finished for him. "You're not wrong. But they're what we have, and we're here to fight." The Kethfer leader was clearly trying to be polite, but Grant could see what he was thinking. The human ships looked like junk compared to the elegant Kethfer vessels, and the USS scrapyard was literally held together with welding patches. USS Patchwork had smoke coming from one of its engines. The USS Makeshift looked like it might fall apart if someone sneezed on it. "Commander." Kate Sullivan's voice came over the fleet communication channel from the USS Survivor. "Admiral, I'm analyzing the machine composition. These things are definitely designed to counter advanced energy weapons. Every time the Kethfer fire at them, they adapt and get stronger." Lieutenant Commander Nick Adams added his report from the USS Laboratory. "I'm seeing something interesting, Admiral. The machines have defense protocols for quantum weapons, particle beams, gravitic missiles, and every other type of advanced technology in the galaxy. But I'm not seeing any protocols for primitive kinetic weapons or chemical explosives." Grant felt a spark of hope. "Are you saying they might not know how to defend against our weapons?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. These machines were built to fight advanced civilizations. They expect to face quantum cannons and phase missiles. They might not even recognize our railguns and chemical rockets as weapons." Captain Joe Franklin spoke up from the USS Scrapper. "So you're telling me that my mining laser might actually work better than their fancy energy cannons?" "It's possible. Your mining laser uses a completely different type of energy frequency. The machines might not have any defense against industrial cutting tools." Vextar was listening to the human conversation with growing confusion. "I do not understand. You speak of primitive weapons as if they were superior to our quantum technology." Grant turned back to the alien leader. "Vextar, your weapons are incredibly advanced. But these machines were built to fight advanced weapons. Our weapons are so old and simple that the machines might not know what to do with them. But surely primitive weapons cannot harm machines that have defeated our most powerful fleets." "Maybe not," Grant admitted. "But right now, primitive weapons are all we have. And sometimes, the simplest solution is the best solution." As if to prove her point, one of the machine clusters suddenly changed direction and started moving toward the human fleet. Grant could see thousands of individual drones separating from the main swarm and forming attack formations. "All ships, battle stations," Grant ordered. "This is what we came here to do." The human fleet moved into combat formation, though it looked nothing like the precise movements of either the Kethfer ships or the machine swarm. The human ships were different sizes and had different capabilities, so they couldn't move in perfect formation even if they tried. Captain Danny Chen called from the USS Patchwork. "Admiral, my reactor is holding steady at 65%. We're ready for combat?" "Sort of." "That's the best news I've heard all day," Grant replied. The machine drones approached the human fleet in perfect geometric patterns. They moved like they were following a mathematical formula, precise and predictable. Grant had fought many different enemies in her career, but she had never fought anything that moved with such cold perfection. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, Garcia reported. Grant looked at her mismatched fleet one more time. 47 ships that looked like they belonged in a scrapyard. Most of them were older than some of the crew members flying them. Them had been repaired so many times that they were more patched than original ship, but they were human ships. Crewed by human beings who had traveled across the galaxy to help people they had never met. They might not be the most advanced fleet in the galaxy, but they were here and they were ready to fight. "All ships, prepare to engage," Grant announced. "Let's show these machines what happens when they threaten innocent people." The machine drones opened fire first, launching streams of energy that could destroy most ships in seconds. But as the weapons struck the human vessels, something unexpected happened. The USS Frankenstein's chaotic mix of different shield systems somehow deflected the machine weapons in random directions. The energy beams that should have destroyed the ship instead bounced off at strange angles. "Commander." Rick Peterson's voice came over the radio, sounding surprised. I have no idea how that worked, but we're still alive. The USS Scrapyard's mining. Armor, designed to protect against asteroid impacts, proved surprisingly effective against the machine weapons. The energy beams left scorch marks on the hull, but didn't penetrate the thick industrial plating. Turn fire, Grant ordered. The human fleet opened fire with their collection of obsolete and improvised weapons. Railguns launched solid metal. Slugs at incredible speeds. Chemical rockets carried explosive warheads toward their targets. Mining lasers designed to cut through rock focused their beams on machine drones, and something amazing happened. The machines started to die. Captain Joe Franklin watched in amazement as his railgun shots tore through the machine drones like they were made of paper. The USS Scrapper had been a mining ship for 15 years before being converted for military use. Its railguns were designed to break apart asteroids, not fight in space battles. But the solid metal slugs were punching through the machine's swarm like nothing Franklin had ever seen. Direct hit, direct hit, Franklin shouted over the communication channel. These things don't know what to do with good old-fashioned bullets, Admiral. Grant felt a surge of hope as she watched the battle unfold on her screens. The machines that had easily absorbed the Kethfer energy weapons were being destroyed by simple kinetic weapons. The metal slugs from human railguns were too basic for the machines to understand or counter. The USS Makeshift, commanded by Captain Mary Johnson, launched a salvo of chemical explosive missiles. These were not advanced quantum warheads or sophisticated smart bombs. They were simple rockets filled with chemical explosives, the same type of weapons that humans had been using for hundreds of years. The machine drones tried to use their energy absorption systems to defend against the missiles, but chemical explosions didn't work that way. When the warheads detonated, they created simple heat and pressure waves that the machines had no way to absorb or redirect. Dozens of drones vanished in brilliant fireballs. Admiral Captain Johnson called out, her voice filled with excitement. The machines keep trying to hack our missile guidance systems, but our computers are so old they can't understand the programming language we're using. Commander Rick Peterson's USS Frankenstein was proving to be the machine's worst nightmare. The ship had been built from parts of 6 different vessels, none of which were designed to work together. Its computer systems were a chaotic mix of different operating systems and programming languages. Some parts of the ship ran on software that was 20 years old. The machines are trying to infiltrate our systems, Peterson reported. But our computers are so messed up that even we don't know how they work half the time. I think we just confused their infiltration programs into crashing. The Kethfer fleet watched in stunned silence as the human ships tore through the machine formations. Council leader Vextar's voice came over the communication channel, filled with disbelief. How is this possible? He asked. Our quantum cannons could not penetrate their defenses. Our particle beams only made them stronger. But your primitive weapons are destroying them easily. Sometimes old is better than new, Grant replied as she watched the USS Survivor launch a spread of conventional torpedoes. The torpedoes were guided by simple radar systems instead of quantum sensors, and the machines seemed unable to jam or confuse them. Chief Petty Officer Tina Brooks called in from the USS Improvise. Admiral, the funniest thing just happened? The machines tried to take control of our navigation system, but we're still using a backup computer from 2387. It's so obsolete that their hacking programs don't even recognize it as a computer, Captain. Steve Hughes was having the time of his life aboard the USS Resilient. His converted mining ship was equipped with industrial cutting lasers that were designed to slice through metal asteroids. The lasers used a completely different energy frequency than military weapons, and the machine drones had no defense against them. It's like they've never seen industrial equipment before, Hughes reported as his cutting lasers carved through a group of machine fighters. These things are built to counter military weapons, not mining tools. The battle was turning into a rout. The machine swarm that had destroyed galactic empires was being beaten by a collection of obsolete human ships. Using weapons that most advanced civilizations had abandoned centuries ago, but the machines were learning. Grant could see them starting to adapt their tactics. Instead of trying to absorb the human weapons, they began trying to avoid them. The perfect geometric formations broke apart as individual drones started moving in random patterns. Adapting, Lieutenant Commander Garcia warned. They're changing their behavior to counter our tactics. Then we change our tactics too, Grant replied. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships implement Protocol Stone Age. Use your most primitive weapons and tactics. If it's advanced or complicated, don't use it. Protocol Stone Age was a theoretical battle plan that the human military had developed as a joke. It was based on the idea of fighting using the most basic weapons and methods possible. No one had ever expected to actually use it in real combat. Captain Jerry Williams took the protocol literally aboard the USS Caveman. The ship had been equipped with magnetic accelerators for launching mining equipment. Williams ordered his crew to load the accelerators with simple iron rods and launch them at the machine formations. The iron rods flew through space at incredible speeds, guided by nothing more than basic physics. The machine drones, expecting smart missiles or energy weapons, had no idea how to defend against pieces of metal flying in straight lines. The rods punched through their holes like spears through paper. Our weapons don't get much more primitive. Then throwing sharp sticks, Williams announced cheerfully, the USS Primitive, under Commander Pam Dixon, released clouds of metallic chaff into space. Chaff was an ancient Earth's technology that had been used to confuse radar systems for hundreds of years. It was nothing more than tiny pieces of metal that reflected radio waves. The machine swarm's sensors were incredibly sophisticated, designed to track quantum signatures and energy patterns across multiple dimensions, but they had no idea what to do with simple radio wave interference. The chaff clouds blinded their sensors completely. I can't believe that worked, Dixon said in amazement. We just blinded the most advanced artificial intelligence in the galaxy, using technology from the 21st century. Captain Alan Rodriguez decided to take Protocol Stone Age to its logical extreme. His ship, the USS Antique, was the oldest vessel in the fleet and was scheduled to be scrapped after this mission. Instead of trying to preserve it, Rodriguez ordered his crew to abandon ship and prepare for ramming speed. If you can't outshoot them and you can't outsmart them, just hit them really hard, Rodriguez announced as his crew climbed into escape pods. The USS Antique, now flying on autopilot, crashed directly into the center of a machine cluster. Ship's hull was filled with chemical explosives that detonated on impact. The explosion was not sophisticated or elegant. It was just a very big boom that destroyed everything within a kilometer radius. The machine swarm had no protocols for dealing with kamikaze attacks using chemical explosives. Their advanced defensive systems were designed to counter energy weapons and smart missiles, not ships that simply flew into them and exploded. Captain Bobby Martinez was inspired by Rodriguez's sacrifice. The USS Underdog was a research vessel. That wasn't supposed to be in combat at all, but Martinez had an idea. Admiral, we've got a cargo hold full of survey probes. They're designed to study planets, but they use simple chemical rocket engines. What if we load them with explosives and use them as guided missiles? Do it, Grant replied. The survey probes were ancient technology, guided by simple computer programs that used basic navigation systems. They flew toward the machine formations like tiny guided bombs. Too primitive for the machines to recognize as threats until it was too late. Each probe carried only a small explosive charge. But there were hundreds of them. They swarmed through the machine formations like angry insects, detonating one after another in a series of small explosions that added up to devastating damage. The machine swarm was in chaos. Their perfect formations were breaking apart as individual. Drones tried to flee from weapons they couldn't understand or counter. They'd been programmed to fight the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. But no one had prepared them for an enemy that fought with rocks and sticks. Council leader Vexstar's voice came over the communication channel, filled with wonder and disbelief. Your primitive weapons are defeating an enemy that destroyed our greatest fleets. How is this possible? Admiral Grant smiled as she watched another group of machine drones fall to a spread of simple chemical rockets. Vexstar, sometimes the old ways are the best ways. These machines were built to counter advanced technology, but they never learned how to fight against a good old-fashioned rock thrown really, really hard. Admiral Grant could see that the battle was reaching its most important moment. The machine swarm was damaged and confused, but it was still dangerous. Millions of drones were still active, and they were starting to learn how to avoid the human weapons. If the machines had time to fully adapt, they might become impossible to defeat. Grant made a decision that would be remembered throughout the galaxy for centuries to come. She opened a communication channel to every ship in her fleet. All ships. This is Admiral Grant. We're going to implement the final phase of Protocol Stone. Age. I want every ship to use the most primitive weapons and tactics you can think of. If it's complicated, don't use it. If it requires a computer, don't use it. Fight like our ancestors fought when they only had sticks and stones. Captain Jerry Williams aboard the USS Caveman took the Admiral's words to heart. He ordered his crew to convert the ship's industrial fabricators to produce simple iron spears. The fabricators were designed to make replacement parts for mining equipment, but they could easily shape metal into pointed weapons. Load the magnetic launchers with iron spears, Williams ordered. We're going to fight these machines like ancient warriors. The iron spears were launched at tremendous speeds. Using the ship's magnetic acceleration systems, each spear was nothing more than a pointed piece of metal, but when launched at several kilometers per second, they became devastating weapons. The machine drones had no defense protocols for such simple projectiles. The spears punched through the machine holes and came out the other side, destroying multiple drones with each shot. The machines tried to analyze the weapons to develop countermeasures, but there was nothing to analyze. They were just pieces of metal flying in straight lines. Commander Pam Dixon on the USS Primitive had an even simpler idea. She ordered her crew to release clouds of metallic dust into space. The dust was made from grinding up spare metal parts in the ship's recycling systems. It wasn't designed to be a weapon at all, but when the machine drones flew through the dust clouds at high speed, the tiny metal particles acted like sandpaper against their hulls. The sophisticated armor that could resist quantum weapons was gradually worn away by simple friction. I can't believe we're defeating space monsters with dust, Dixon said in amazement as she watched the machine drones slow down to avoid the abrasive clouds. The USS Laboratory, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Nick Adams, tried a different approach. Adams had been studying the machine communication patterns and noticed something interesting. The machines coordinated their actions using quantum communication signals that were incredibly complex and sophisticated. Adams decided to disrupt their communications using the most primitive method possible. He ordered his crew to broadcast random radio signals on every frequency their equipment could reach. Signals weren't sophisticated jamming technology. They were just noise, but the machine communication system was so advanced that it couldn't filter out the simple radio static. Their quantum processors kept trying to analyze the meaningless signals, wasting processing power and causing communication delays throughout the swarm. Were confusing their super-advanced brains with random noise, Adams reported happily. It's like trying to solve a mathematical equation while someone plays loud music in your ear. Captain Danny Chen on the USS Patchwork came up with the most dangerous plan of all. His ship's reactor had been held together with emergency repairs for months. Instead of trying to keep it stable, Chen decided to make it deliberately unstable. We're going to fly into the middle of the machine formation and let our reactor have a meltdown, Chen announced to his crew. Everyone get to the escape pods. This is going to be messy. The crew evacuated the ship, leaving Chen alone on the bridge. He flew the USS Patchwork directly into the heart of the largest machine cluster and then shut down all the reactor safety systems. The reactor began to overload, building up energy for a massive explosion. The machines detected the energy buildup, tried to use their absorption systems to contain the explosion. But Chen's reactor wasn't using advanced fusion technology or quantum containment fields. It was an old-fashioned fission reactor that used simple nuclear decay to produce power. When the reactor exploded, it released radiation and energy in patterns that the machines couldn't absorb or redirect. The explosion destroyed thousands of drones and left a huge gap in the machine formation. Captain Ray Murphy decided that if Chen could sacrifice his ship, So could he. The USS Primitive was loaded with chemical explosives that were supposed to be used for mining operations. Murphy flew his ship toward the machine swarm's central command cluster, the group of large drones that seemed to be coordinating the entire swarm. "This is for everyone who can't fight back," Murphy said as he activated the ship's self-destruct system. The USS Primitive exploded in the middle of the command cluster. Without their central coordination, the individual machine drones began to malfunction. They had been designed to work as parts of a larger intelligence, but they couldn't function independently when that intelligence was damaged. The machine swarm, which had moved with perfect coordination just minutes before, suddenly became chaotic and disorganized. Drones crashed into each other or flew in random directions. Some simply stopped moving and floated helplessly in space. "Admiral," Grant watched the enemy formation collapse and knew they had won. "All ships continue the attack. Target any machines that are still organized." The remaining human ships pressed their advantage, using their primitive weapons to destroy the confused and scattered machine drones. The USS Scrapyard's mining lasers cut through groups of disabled machines. The USS Survivor's chemical rockets finished off any drones that tried. To regroup within an hour, the battle was over. The machine swarm that had destroyed multiple galactic civilizations was reduced to floating debris and lifeless metal. The Kethfer fleet approached slowly, their elegant ships moving cautiously through the wreckage. Council Leader Vexstar face appeared on Admiral Grant's communication screen. For the first time since the crisis began, he looked hopeful instead of terrified. "Admiral Grant," Vexstar said, his voice filled with wonder. "Your fleet has accomplished something that our greatest military minds said was impossible. You have defeated the machine swarm using weapons that we abandoned thousands of years ago as primitive and ineffective." Grant looked at what remained of her fleet. 23 ships had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The survivors looked even more battered than when they had arrived, but they had won. "Vexstar, we learned something important today," Grant replied. "Just because something is new and advanced doesn't mean it's better. Sometimes the old ways work because they're simple and reliable. But how did you know that primitive weapons would be effective against such advanced enemies?" Grant smiled. "We didn't know. We just used what we had and hoped for the best. That's what humans do when someone asks for help. We try, even when we don't think we can win." The Kethfer leader was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "Your species fights not because you expect to win, but because it is the right thing to do. That's right. And you use simple weapons, not because they are better, but because they are what you have available. Also right, this is difficult for us to understand. You've always believed that more advanced technology was superior to primitive methods." Grant looked out at the debris field that had once been an unstoppable enemy. "Vexstar, we just proved that the most sophisticated lock in the universe can still be opened with a big enough hammer." The battle became famous throughout the galaxy. Every species heard the story of how humanity's weakest fleet had saved one of the most advanced civilizations in known space by using weapons that were thousands of years out of date. The story was told and retold, growing in the telling. Some versions claimed that the humans had fought the machines with nothing but rocks and sticks. Others said they had used weapons made of wood and metal. All the stories agreed on one thing: the humans had won by being too primitive for their enemies to understand from that day forward. No alien species ever again made the mistake of underestimating human technology just because it seemed simple or outdated. Military academies throughout the galaxy began teaching courses on primitive warfare tactics and the advantages of technological simplicity. But the most important lesson was simpler than any military strategy. When someone needed help, humans helped them, regardless of the odds. When someone threatened innocent people, humans fought back, regardless of their chances of winning. And sometimes, when you fought with simple weapons and a good heart, you could defeat enemies that seemed impossible to beat. The universe was a big and dangerous place, but it was a little bit safer because 47 beat-up human ships had been willing to try the impossible.